Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today, I want to talk about design pillars. This is something that I've mentioned several times in several past videos. I've seen a lot of comments from people asking me to explain them, kind of like what are they? How are they used? How do you write them? So I thought I'd describe what they are. And then because they've changed over the years, I'm going to give you examples of what Fallouts were, and then what Arcanums were, and finally what the Outer Worlds design pillars were. And you can kind of see for yourself how they changed over the years and how they were used. So first of all, let me define design pillars. They are the high-level guidelines for making the whole game, every aspect. The story, the system mechanics, the ads. If you look at the pillars, you will have a good idea of what kind of game is being made. Not just what the setting is and what the basic genre of the game is, but you'll have a good idea of what the intention is of this game. The pillars are the foundation upon which the entire game rests. And because of that, you have to make these early. These are foundational. If you're making a game and 2 years in, you decide to change design pillars, you have just changed the game and you have possibly invalidated all the work you just did in the last 2 years. So design pillars tend to be made as early as possible in the design process. I told you it goes setting, story, mechanics. Certainly, before you're done with mechanics, you should have your design pillars, preferably before you're even done with the setting. Also, the entire team should accept and understand these pillars. They should have read them, and they should agree with them, and not just the designers, the artists and the writers and the programmers. Everybody working on this game should know what these pillars are, understand what they mean, and accept that that's the game they're making. Early on, when I made games either by myself or there's maybe me and another artist or maybe one other programmer, you didn't really need pillars. I think it's still wise for small teams to make them, just so it's very clear what game you're trying to make, and you can also share these when people say, what are you making? You can say, here are the pillars. It's great if you ever publish or you're talking with journalists or whatever, it's great to share those pillars. But when teams were tiny, everybody just kind of got it. As teams got bigger, especially when you had people working on specialized things or people that weren't going to talk to everyone on the team every day, you kind of needed explicit pillars, just so everybody agreed, everybody's on the same page. Interestingly enough, I don't even think when we first made them, we didn't even call them pillars. I believe Fallout's was called the Vision Dock, but then inside it listed what essentially were the pillars. Also, the Fallout one was huge. It was multiple pages long. The Arcanum one was a couple pages, and I don't even think the Outer Worlds one filled an entire Confluence page, like a screen on Confluence. Because as I said, design docs are not static either. And as we went along, they went from individual Word docs to networked Word docs that had tracking changes turned on, to now we do everything in Confluence pages that are interlinked together. So let me start with Fallout's pillars, and I will go over those. Now remember, these weren't called pillars. These are part of the vision document. Brian Fargo asked me to write the Fallout vision document late November, early December of 95. Because by that time I had a team, a pretty big team, and I think it was at least 20 people, big by Enterprise standards. And he said, I want to know what the vision is for the game. And I wrote one, and he hated it. And I was like, and I tried again. I tried really hard on the second one, and he hated it. I was frustrated by then because I was like, I don't know what he wants. I'm writing down what I think the vision is. And Chris Taylor knew I was frustrated. We had come back from Christmas break. This is early January. He could tell I was frustrated. He goes, let me give a crack at it. And I said, please, just give me something I can give him that we like and he likes. Chris wrote something up. We loved it. Now, it's too long for me to read the whole thing. It's a really long document, and it's funny, and it's got kind of some dark humor in it too. But I will go over. Just so you know, Fallout's vision statement listed 14 design pillars. And if you've played Fallout, you can tell me how close we came to achieving all of these pillars. I can tell you some of them maybe not so close, but I will go through them in order. Pillar 1, mega levels of violence. We threw it up there right at the beginning. We wanted our game to be violent. Now keep in mind, we said this explicitly in 96, and everybody knew that's what we were making. So if later on anyone expressed surprise at how violent Fallout was, I wasn't having it. The second pillar was that there is often no right solution. And it's interesting that he said this before the next pillar, which is there will always be multiple solutions. Because I used to always say, hey, there's got to be multiple solutions to everything, except for side quests, which I've talked about. But Chris also wanted to emphasize that sometimes there's no right solution, that there's only different ways of doing it that are shades of gray. You can do it this way, but then these people aren't happy. You can do it this way, and these people aren't happy. You can do it this third way, and everybody's unhappy. But there is no, correct way of doing it. That really, really resonated with the Fallout team. The fourth pillar was that players' actions affect the world, and the world will react to the player. I think we did a really good job at that. The end slides are informed by that. We really didn't want the player to be able to leave the game without knowing, hey, you caused a lot of stuff. You caused some collateral damage on your rampaging around Southern California after a nuclear war. The fifth one was that there should always be a sense of urgency. We wanted the player to feel like, I got to do that. I got to save my vault. Oh no, I got to take care of these mutants. Oh no, I got to get rid of the master. This is the pillar that everybody who wanted the timer in the game, the one that if you didn't get the water chip in 150 days, the game would end. They would appeal to pillar number 5 and say, hey, we have to have a sense of urgency. Personally, I thought that was too much, but we obviously shipped with it, and then we patched it. The 6 pillars, we wanted the game to be open-ended, meaning that was a combination of we wanted you to be able to go wherever you wanted. We wanted to be able to do what you wanted. The game just had to be able to handle that. And no matter how you played, the game would come up with an ending for it. It would have, that's why we had end slides for you being dipped in the vat and joining the mutant army, and we had end slides for you killing off all the mutants. The 7th pillar was we always wanted the player to have a goal. Basically, we never wanted the player to not know what he should be doing. And that's why there are really only 3 main goals in Fallout. Get the water chip, destroy the mutant army, destroy the master. You always know you have to be doing that. There may be quests that you're on, there may be side quests you're on, but you always know overarching what you're supposed to be doing. The 8th pillar was the player has control over his own actions. We never wanted to take agency away from the player. We never wanted to tell the player, okay, right now you have to be good, you have to be bad, you have to kill this person, directly. I mean, some of our solutions involve blowing up where the person happened to be. There was a lot of stuff where we often rejected quests because we're like, I don't want to make the player do that. Or I don't want when you describe your quest idea, step 3 is, and then the player does this. We just didn't like that. The 9th one was interface. This is the one I'm like, you're probably thinking, We really felt strongly that we had to make a really good interface. We were concerned at the time with games coming out with really complicated interfaces. We knew our game was complicated. We tried to make it as simple as possible. We could have done a better job, but we had that as a pillar. We tried. The 10th pillar were the encounter windows. We loved the play heads so much that we made those encounter windows, is what we called them. We made that a pillar of the game. We wanted to have as many of those as we could. We thought they were cool. We thought they sold the game. We thought they gave the game a particular kind of vibe. The 11th pillar was we wanted to put in as wide variety of weapons and armor and actions the player could take with them as we could. This led to the 12th one, which was we also wanted very detailed character creation rules. We wanted the player to be able to make, if they could think of it, they could kind of make a character like that. And this is back when we were doing GURPS, which meant we were using, I think we had over 100. I want to say we had over 200 of the skills, but I don't remember, but it was a lot. And because of that, that's why we made pre-made characters, because this pillar said detailed character creation rules, but also pre-made characters. We knew that casual players or people playing the game for the first time are not going to be able to absorb all this or know what was important. So we said, have some pre-made characters. The 13th pillar was interesting. Now, keep in mind, we were still making GURPS. It was, we're going to make this game for the public, but we want people who play GURPS to be happy. So in other words, we wanted to be faithful to GURPS, but we wanted people who didn't know GURPS to still think it's a fun game. And that informed a lot of our decisions when we were making choices about what to do about GURPS skills. And then finally, it just said, his 14th pillar was, the team is very motivated. This was something we recognized and we kept as a pillar because we thought it was important. It wasn't until years later that I realized, wow, I've never since then put that as a pillar. I've taken it for granted. Doesn't the team want to make this game they're on? If not, why didn't they be put on another team and make that game? And like I said once when I tried to switch projects with another programmer and the executive producer said no, I'm like, why do you want people making games they don't want to make? But Chris Taylor put that in there as a pillar, that the team is motivated. Not they should be, not they're going to be, that they were. He said everybody was excited making this game, and he was right. Okay, that was a very long-winded vision doc / pillars for Fallout. Now let me tell you what Arcanums were. Arcanums was only a couple pages. There were 5 of them. The first one was tech that matters. And the example we gave was we used dynamic colored lighting. This was something we were excited about, that we had dynamic shadows in our Arcanum demo. It was really cool. Daytime, our sunrise was tinted more bluish than sunset, which was more reddish. The lighting affected skill use, as I explained in another video. So we were saying right there in the proposal that when we put tech in for things, we were using technology so that we could have a more realistic, complex character system mechanics. Going into that, we actually named character creation as one of our pillars. We wanted a rich, class-free character creation system. Even more so in Fallout. We were like, if you could think about it, we wanted you to be able to make it within the context of Arcanum's world. So you couldn't make like Superman or Spider-Man, but you want to be a old crone witch? Boom. You want to be a old West gunslinger? Boom. You could make a character that was very much like that. The third pillar supported that. It was a complex, stat-driven game system. Yes, we actually emphasized in the pillars for Arcanum how complex it was. We thought this was a selling point. Now, I know a lot of you out there going, I know, that's why I liked it. I know. Bear in mind, it's one of the reasons Arcanum didn't sell well. Yes, it was buggy. Yes, there were some other issues. Yes, it got overshadowed by a lot of other games coming out. Yes, it was isometric in a time everyone was going 3D. But one of the things that affected the sales, trust me, or go back and look at reviews, and also I got sales data from Sierra, was the fact it was very complicated. Basically, all the casual RPGers bounced right off of Arcanum. That stuck with me for a long time. You can not believe me, but you really can't deny it, unless you have some sales numbers and some demographics figures that I didn't get. The fourth pillar of Arcanum was a huge single-player quest line. Actually, quest lines. We wanted a ton of quests. We wanted the main quest to be really long. In fact, relative to Fallout, Fallout had 3 main story quests. Get the water chip, destroy the mutant army and the vats, and destroy the master. we had 27 main story points along the Arcanum main story quest line. That's not even counting all the different ways you could do them with all the different characters you could build and the tons of side quests. We had side quests everywhere. We had side quests for every master training of every skill. We were insane back then. And then finally, on top of all of that, we added the multiplayer pillar. Now, yes, that was requested by Sierra. But because they requested it and we committed to it, we made it a pillar. We wanted you to be able to play this game with your friends. We wanted you to be able to make modules. So that's the reason we threw in the tools was effectively to support this pillar. We wanted you to be able to make modules of settings and stories you could play with your friends. Now, how close we achieved all of these on Arcanum, I don't know. That's you. I'll leave that as an exercise for the reader. Finally, let me tell you what the Outer Worlds pillars were. And we only had 3. Well, we really had a 4th one, but there were 3 main ones, and then the 4th one that we just said was a given. So the 4 pillars, or the 3 pillars plus 1, were, the first one is simple but deep. We basically wanted to make the game as simple as possible. The game systems, the stories, the way companions worked, the way quests worked. And I know this has come up because people think we oversimplified, but after Arcanum and in many games after that, I was always worried that I seemed to be pushing away the casual RPG player. And I said, there's got to be a way to make something simple, but not simplistic. So the idea was we would make simple systems that gained depth and complexity if you chose to explore them. And I've explained this before, like our melee skill was very easy. You pick up a weapon, your melee skill determines if you hit people that are within range. Actually, no, you automatically hit people within range. The melee skill determined how much damage you did. It was the range skill that determined if you hit. So that's simple. Pick up this item. If it looks like you're hitting somebody, you're hitting them. How much damage you're doing? Proportional to your skill and the weapon you're using. That's it. Now, if people wanted to learn more, they could start digging into melee, and they put points into melee, and then they would where they put points into combat, and then would specialize into melee, and then they'd have unlocks, and then they could do things like really cool like power attack stuff that were maneuvers that you could choose to do with melee. You could ignore all that if you wanted, but it was there for the non-casual player to start exploring, and then here are perks that go with it, and here are things that are this particular weapon. Maybe I'm going to specialize in science melee weapons. It's going up my science skill and my melee skill, and I'm going to buy some perks that are good for that. Second pillar was dark but humorous. This was basically Leonard and I saying, we've always done this in our games. He's dark, I'm funny. Together we're dark but humorous. We saw it as part of our special sauce. We decided to codify that into a pillar. The same way that Chris Taylor said the team is motivated was a pillar of Fallout. I wanted to codify that into our game, that we could point to it and remind everybody who read these, there's only 4 of them to read. That was something we were trying to do. Our setting may be a struggling, nearly pre-apocalyptic colony world, which is just years away from sliding into barbarism, but you wouldn't know it from playing the game. At first, it seems silly. Well, I shouldn't say silly. Leonard doesn't like silly. It was darkly humorous. And what I liked was the most humorous and even the silly parts of the game were actually the darkest parts of the game. Or they contrasted to, like you've always heard, you can't have darkness without light and vice versa. That's what I like about humor and dark storylines. Our third pillar was interesting because it was the one that got used the most by me when people suggested new features or new content. It was fun trumps realism, but be consistent. Basically, I told people, we're making a game. We're not making a simulation. So we're always going to err on the side of fun over the side of realism. And that came up over and over and over. People wanted things that were more, I guess now they call them ImSims. And I was like, no, but that's realistic, yes, but it's not fun. I like that the player can jump really high. And I like that the fact that, these phobias are something that you gain on a flip. A switch is flipped and bam, now you've got a phobia. I think it's funny. The only thing was we added that be consistent because once you established a limit, you had to be consistent with that. So once you said, falls past this distance are fatal, I didn't want somebody to put in a really short, small pit and then put something at the bottom saying, well, now you're dead. If people look and go, yeah, I've fallen that much before, I can fall that much now. And then they jump off and it just says, nope, you died. I didn't want that. So for all of our roles, we said they can be funny and unrealistic, but once it establishes, how things work, you have to stay with that. And then the fourth one, which we threw in as just a given, because there's no way we weren't going to do this, was The Outer Worlds is a classic Obsidian game, and everything that meant. It meant strong world setting, good narrative, tons of player customization, a variety of companions, player choices that have meaningful consequences, multiple endings. These are things that happen in, all of the classic Obsidian role-playing games. We were going to support it in ours. We originally only had 3 pillars, but people were like, well, shouldn't we be doing these other things? And I'm like, well, those are a given. So I decided I'd throw them all in as one pillar called Classic Obsidian Role-Playing Game. And because of that, that was the 4. They were, they were very simple to tell people. Simple but deep, dark but humorous, fun trumps realism, but be consistent, and a classic Obsidian game. Very easy to understand, very easy to explain to people. And then when they ask questions, you could dive into setting and storyline and all of those things. So every time I talk about design pillars in my talks, I'm talking about something like what I just told you. What started with Fallout, tightened up in Arcanum, and then really we honed for the Outer Worlds. That's what I'm talking about when I say you should have design pillars.